For me, sometimes when things haven't quite gone your way or turned out unexpectedly in a not happy and exciting sort of way, or just a time when you just need to get out and clear your head. For me, nothing is better to clear my head than getting in my car early in the morning and going for a little ride out in the country. Just sort of let the car take you where it's going to go sort of feeling. I half imagine this is how the disciples were sort of going about the way of their lives in autopilot. You know, we really don't know anything about that long silent Saturday between Good Friday and Easter Sunday. We don't know how the disciples spent that Passover Sabbath. We don't know how how they went about their business or the things they said to each other, or if they said anything to each other. We don't know because the Bible doesn't tell us. It has nothing to say about that long silent Saturday. One of the things, though, we can pick up from the Bible, we've got some hints as to what might have been going on. We've got some hints dropped in John 20 and in places like that in Matthew and Mark and Luke. We read about the disciples being locked together on that first day of the week in the upper room. We read about a couple of them out on the road to Emmaus, how they were just traveling away from Jerusalem. We've got the conversation with Peter in John 21, where Peter's back on his fishing boat. We don't know what happened on that long silent Saturday, but I imagine it was a day, sort of like a morning after, where the disciples were looking around and trying to figure out exactly where they were, exactly what had happened, and exactly who they were going to be today, starting today. Everything had changed. For them, the Savior who had come, who had, this Jesus who had discipled them, who had been with them for the last 3 years, was suddenly branded a criminal by the religious authorities. He had been hanged from a cross by the political government and governing authorities, by the Roman Empire, been branded a traitor to Rome. It was a terrible day. They had shared a meal with him and then found out that one of their own, someone who they'd lived with and shared meals with and had worked alongside for 3 years or better, betrayed them all, betrayed Jesus and betrayed the rest of them, brought Roman guards and temple soldiers to the garden where they were meeting and praying. And to top all that off, there was not a one of them who wasn't dealing with, in some way or other, his own sense of failure, his own sense of having failed Jesus. They'd run off in fear. One of them had denied him, even when he asked them to do something as simple as stay awake with him and pray. They couldn't even do that. They had failed Jesus. What were they going to make of themselves? What was going to happen to them now? Where were they going to go? They couldn't show their face in Jerusalem. Everybody in Jerusalem knew they'd been hanging out with him. So what are they going to do? In some ways, during this quarantine and outbreak of COVID-19, we've been feeling a little bit of that same pressure those disciples had been feeling. This is an Easter, I've said it before, and other pastors have said it. This is an Easter like no other. In my memory, I could never remember a time when the churches weren't able to meet on Easter, when we weren't able to gather together around the Lord's people and his table and to enjoy all the great traditions that make Easter so fun. We're in a sort of morning after ourselves. What do we make of it? What do we do with it? Maybe we look at it and think, all the second guessing sort of thing that the disciples were going through. Well, maybe I should have stood up more to do this, or maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have done something else to make things better, or to make things, if not better, different. Maybe we're simply angry that our traditions and our customs, our faith is being pushed on a sideline here for the sake of what? And we don't understand it and we're mad about it. Maybe we're just confused. Maybe we're just confused. Bewildered that all this could happen so quickly. Bewildered at how, what's going on. We don't know for certain. It's hard to say. It's hard to know. Bewildered because we don't know what happens next. If I had to guess, on that long silent Saturday, that's where those disciples were most of all. Bewildered about what happens next. Now, for you and me, we already know what happens next. We already know that tomorrow the sun rises on an empty grave. We already know that tomorrow Mary Magdalene sees the risen Jesus in the garden. We already know that Peter and John will stoop in and see the cloths empty and the linen folded. We already know that Jesus will come to them and say, "Don't be afraid." He'll look at Thomas and say, "Touch my hands. Put your fingers in my side where it was pierced." We know all that. But on that long silent Saturday, the disciples didn't. So let's take a moment and think about what we don't know. What makes us bewildered or angry or afraid? And let's think about how Jesus can help us to overcome it, to overcome ourselves, and to be a reflection of Him, the light of the world. This long silent Saturday, think about Jesus and the empty tomb that you and I get to remember tomorrow morning. God bless you from Bishopville, South Carolina.